Hey everyone, I am back. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. I hope that you have had a really awesome and amazing week. Let me know where you're tuning in from today in the chat. For those of you who are brand new to Mental Health Moment, if this is your first mental health moment, welcome, welcome. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. And for those of you who are tuning in on Dr. Nekeshia Hammond YouTube, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you are brand new to Mental Health Moment, first of all, welcome. Again, we're here every Tuesday, live, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Black Women Empowered Incorporated, Facebook page, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live. And essentially, what Mental Health Moment is for, and has been for, I don't know, a gazillion years. I feel like no, it's been some years though. Is how do you become the best version of who you are, right? So you can show up for yourself powerfully and show up for those around you, right? So it's what can you do? Different tips that I share each week to make sure that you're working on yourself, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, wherever you need to work on yourself, right? It's really important to grow as a person and to be the best version of who you are for yourself and those around you. This is a continuation. I know some of you are new of getting into the new year here. I can't believe we're already in February, you all, which is insane to me. That we've just, I don't know. I feel like I blinked and January passed by. But nonetheless, we're continuing on this journey of the beginning of the year. A lot of times there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of excitement, new year, new me, all that sort of thing, right? Which is a great thing. But then things start to happen, life starts to happen, and before you know it, it's mid-year and that sort of thing, right? But I want to remind you today that many of you did set your goals for this year, whatever your goals look like, whether it was hopefully on that list of goals, your wellness goals for you, whether it's your self care, whether you said you need to spend more time with yourself, you need to spend more time with friends or family, or however the growth looked for you for your mental health in your life. You set that goal. For some of you, you set goals of losing weight. For some of you, you set goals for making more money. You set spiritual goals. You set goals to get a new job, or maybe be in a new career, or be in a new relationship, or all these sorts of things. Like I saw a lot of different areas of goals when we talked about that earlier on, which is amazing. As you're making these goals, which are great goals, again, all of us, we talked a lot about that, making sure to check in with yourself, checking with your needs. Also, what do you need at this point in time? And many of you, we talked about that at length, right? But now, what I want to remind you of as we continue to dive into this new year, it's still new to me, right? As we continue to dive into this new year, is to also be in a mental space. I put it on my Instagram for those of you who follow me yesterday. You saw my little note at the top to be ready, right? And what does that mean? Sometimes we're in this mindset, which is not a bad thing. Like you set your goals, your wellness goals, the new me, new year, all these things, which is great. But then have you really thought about what if you actually achieve those things? And what if you got those things? And what if you lost the weight? Or what if you got into the new relationship or the new job or whatever it is that you wanted for this new year? You had extra time for you, whatever it is, right? What if it actually happened? Right? Because a lot of times we're in this like tunnel vision of like, let me just try to do these things, work on these things. But then you don't think about you need to your goal is to become a better version of who you are, right? Hopefully, many of us want that. But if you actually achieve the things that you wanted, that requires most times a different version of who you are today. So let me give you an example. I've met many people who have lost a very significant amount of weight, between like 50 to 100 pounds, which is pretty significant amount of weight, right? And what happened, unfortunately, though, to these individuals is although they worked so hard physically to lose the weight, right? So that the physical goal was met, the weight was lost. But the problem was during the process, there was no uh, there was no focus on mentally and emotionally who they were should also have been working on becoming, right? So unfortunately, what happened is even though the weight was gone, so physically they were changed, but emotionally and mentally, some of those negative thoughts that they had said about themselves and thought about themselves, the lack of self love, uh, the negative thinking, the ways of being, all those sorts of things, none of that changed. Right. And so what happens in general is when you here, you want to be over here. The issue is when you have the same mentality though, even the things that you think you want or the things you can achieve, sometimes we fall into the self-sabotage game, right? And you can't keep those things because you didn't also work on mentally building yourself up to handle the things that you wanted to get. Are you guys with me? Type yes in the chat if you're with me. Type yes, I get it, or some type of emoji in the chat if you understand that process. That you have to also be working always on your personal development for whatever it is that you're trying. Again, if you're trying to get a promotion at work, if you're trying to be in a new relationship, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to grow spiritually, whatever it is that you want to get to, you have to also be working on you. Always think about how can I work on me to be better? How can I handle whatever it is, whatever level of abundance that whatever abundance comes in many different forms, right? I hope that for each and every one of you, whatever that looks like for you. It's not always just money. People think, oh, abundance is money. That's one form. There's a lot of different forms of abundance. Love is abundance and support from others and being having peace of mind. Like there's a lot of things that go into abundance. But to have that, though, you have to work on being a different version of who you are. What I want to remind you of on today's mental health moment, then, is for you to be in that space not only because there's two types of spaces, so not only being in the space of thinking about, man, how can I become a better version of myself, but what do you need to add into your life to make that happen? So in again, let's say you have a physical goal. A lot of people have the goal, I want to lose x amount of pounds, that sort of thing. Like, do that. What do you need to change? Your diet? Do you need to change exercising? Whatever it is you need to make those changes, which are important. But along the way, also be thinking about, man, how can mentally and emotionally, what changes do I need to make in my life? Because you have to be a different person, right? To keep the weight off. You have to hopefully, right? You're also thinking about mentally, how can I have a different thought process? I remember think it's been like 4 years now, when I started, CrossFit. Actually, I mean, for those of you who are not familiar, I think it's a pretty common thing, which most people have heard of, but if you haven't, it's a pretty rigorous exercise program, right? And I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning years ago. I had no idea what I was doing. And though I had to not only physically did it challenge me, and I'm grateful for the physical benefits, but mentally, what it did to my mental toughness, like I had to become a different person to, first of all, do those kind of workouts, but also I had to really sit with my thoughts because I had a just the mentality I was in with just certain exercises, like, I don't feel like doing it. Like all the things that I used to have to try to fight through, I had to build myself up mentally. Also, it wasn't just physically being able to lift weights, but mentally getting into the mindset where I'm like, no, this is a priority. No, I don't feel like doing this today, but I'm going to do it anyway. Right. Like all those sorts of things. And now, years later, and it takes time for these things, but years later, I have a completely different mentality when it comes to that version of growing physically, right? Growing. So it's the same thing for you, whether it's physically, whether it's spiritually, whether it's emotionally, whatever area of your life that you're like, man, I want to make these changes or I want these things to happen, which they can. Also know, make sure that you have in place your own level of personal development. I can share with you what I've done, which does not at all mean, you all, that you have to do exactly what I've done, right? I'm just giving you examples of what I've done. You may be like, yep, I want to try that too. Or you'd be like, nope, that's not for me, right? So over the years, not only well, on the physical side, I was like, okay, I need to add in more physical activity, more movement, because it not only helped me physically, but it was really helping me mentally. And it kind of expanded to other areas of my life, just helping with mental toughness. But that was one piece. But another thing I added in for my spirituality, which I've talked about in a couple other mental health moments, is again, for me personally, Mental health moment is open to every race, religion, ethnicity, gender, like everyone's welcome. I'm not trying to convert anyone by any means, but personally what I did was I added in devotional time in the morning. In addition to my gratitude practice, I have a weekly it's like a what do they call it? Like a prayer journal type of thing, but it's like a weekly one, and then I have a daily one, and then I have another activity that I do to help with just level of abundance, because again, abundance looks different. It's not just only money, but it comes in many different forms. Wealth comes with love, support from others. How do you help others? How are you able to help more people? Like there's a lot of different levels, right? So I work on that as well. And then what I added in this year, I don't know if some of you have heard of Mind Valley, for example. And it doesn't have to be this program, just give you an example. But they have a lot of mindset shifts and different type of programs and things for you to think of to build yourself up as a person. So I added that in. That's something I do as well, along with reading and listening to podcasts and just being surrounded by things that are going to uplift me. The world is heavy. There's unfortunately just a lot of negativity in the world sometimes. So making sure to surround yourself with the things for you that bring you joy, with the things and people who are supporting you is really, really important. So those are just some examples. I know that was a lot. You don't have to do any of them or take a couple of them to try. Again, whatever works for you. Oh, and the other thing, and I shared it, I think I shared a couple mental health moments ago, was my as a family, what we did was, which was Jay Shetty's suggestion, but we started like a kind of like a gratitude jar, and each week, the three of us will put in post-its of what went amazing first that week, and what's something we're grateful for. We'll each put it in. We don't tell each other what it is, and then at the end of the year, we're gonna go through all the post-it notes and read. It'd just be kind of cool to look back and see how the year went, and see the amazing things that happened. So those are just some examples. I know that's a lot. So I don't want to overwhelm you all, but I wanted to give you examples because you might be like, "Ooh, I want to try this or not try this," which is fine. You have to know what your action step is. It's funny because we talk a lot of mental health moment about the action steps, right? About the tools and the tips and the strategies. But the biggest issue that I have seen from people, and I get it, is that we're too busy sometimes to take a minute to check in with ourselves and even see what we need in the moment, right? What I need today is not the same as what I needed 6 months ago or a year ago or 5 years from now, from 5 years ago, right? Because we're always changing, we're evolving, things happen, life looks differently, and that's okay. That's why it's important to check in with ourselves often. But I love that someone said, "Okay, I need to move away from negative people." Fantastic. If that's a part of what's going to make you what you know you need to be a better version of who you are, then you do that for you. I know everybody's busy, but ideally, if you can do that on a daily basis, that would be amazing. Or at a minimum, a weekly basis. Like you just taking a small amount of time to be like, man, what do I need right now? How am I doing? What action steps do I need to take? All right. And I'm sharing this with you personally and professionally because these are things I didn't used to do, you all. So a long time ago, I was like so busy, so hectic, life's busy, I don't have time for me. And then I drastically changed my life because that doesn't work. And it absolutely leads to burnout. So I had to make some major changes. But the good side now, right, is really recognizing how important it is to make sure that I'm checking in with myself along with everybody else around me, right? A lot of times it's not uncommon for us to just be just not be intentional with our lives and just be moving, whether it's moving locations or moving to the next job or moving to the next relationship or moving to the next whatever it is, the next task, next thing on your to-do list, instead of taking a minute to be like, hold up, let me take a step back, let me look at the greater picture, let me look at the bigger picture and see what I need to do to work on myself. So again, I shared some examples. I know it was a lot earlier, but I shared some examples with you because just as I'm sharing every single week with you all on mental health moment, personally, I am practicing what I preach, right, with you all as well. So I'm also on this journey right along with you on the wellness journey and absolutely thinking about, man, what do I need to do to be a better version of who I am, right? To be stronger, to grow physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and also making sure to know, just like I told you at the beginning of this broadcast here today, that in order for you to achieve the things, whatever it is that you want to achieve, especially great, amazing things, you have to be a different version of who you are, right? You have to get into a space where when you get those certain things, you don't fall into self sabotage, or you don't do something where you can't keep whatever it is that you've earned, or however it is your life is different, right? So it's really, really critically important that you make the mental space to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and to make sure that you're working on growing as a person. We're all in different places, and that's okay. For some of you, you may be at the beginning where you're like, man, I really, really need to make some massive changes in my life. I really need to focus on myself because, again, as I mentioned before, a lot of us grew up not, I know for myself personally, not at all focusing on ourselves, because it was like, okay, worry about everything else going on around you, which is not a bad thing to do. But you also have to be focusing on your own mental health as well. Right. So again, some of you are at the beginning of this process. Some of you are like, man, I've been doing this for a while. I just need to be in maintenance stage, which is excellent. Some of you are like, I'm trying to level up, Dr. Hammond, and do something even more amazing. Wonderful. Wherever you're at is absolutely amazing. Okay. Like where you're at is good. We're not going to go into self-blame here, right? No judgment on mental health moments. So wherever you're at in this wellness journey is for you. This is your journey. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to change. Be intentional, you all. Be intentional. Whatever it is you're trying to achieve, be intentional with it. Meaning starting your day even. How do you start your day? I told you all many years ago, or a couple years ago, not many years ago, but a couple of years ago, how I started, like, my day doesn't start anymore with running to a cell phone. Like that's not an intentional way to start a day. Or running to an email, or just hopping out of bed and starting. It's like, no, let me do my practice, right? To set up and be intentional in my day. So that's how, again, the gratitude practice that I mentioned, my devotional that I do, like it's just having some meditation time, just having an intentional way to start the day. So even if you don't do that necessarily in the morning, find time during the day to be intentional with what it is you're trying to achieve. Some of you are in a space right now where you're like, man, I really need to set some boundaries. That's okay. You're allowed. Again, do what is best. If it is in the best interest of your mental health, whatever it is that you're deciding, especially when it comes to boundaries, and it's not hurting anyone else, that's probably the right decision for you. If you're helping yourself and you're not hurting anyone else, it's probably the right decision for you. So absolutely set the boundaries, you all, that you need to for your mental health and your wellness. I've done it a couple of times, the sound healing, and it was such a beautiful process. So yeah, I need to schedule to go back to that person and try again, because it was a really beautiful thing. And if some days, absolutely, if some days you're just like, man, I don't know, I don't have anything to be grateful for. I'm just so stressed out. I'm overwhelmed. I feel like my life's falling apart. Everything's going wrong. If you're in that space, someone just said it, like, it's okay. You may have days where you're like, you know what? I woke up today. I'm grateful for that. Like, be grateful for life then. If you just feel like, man, nothing is going right, be grateful for your life. Right. But there's always something to be grateful for, even in the midst of our dark times, which I know is, it's a whole nother mental health moment. I know it's hard sometimes, but there's always something to be grateful for. The self-respect and the self-love that you have when you set certain boundaries is something that's really important. We did a whole mental health moment about that. I know many of you are new tonight, or today, depending on where you're at in the world. But we did a whole mental health moment about self-love. That's a whole nother journey. It's not an overnight process. A lot of us have all sorts of different experiences, life experiences, which may have affected your level of self-love in some way. So the good news is there are ways to deal with trauma. There are ways to get back to a place of self-love. It's not overnight, as I mentioned. Sometimes you need the help of a mental health professional, which is okay, right? It's absolutely okay to get the help that you need. But it's most important to make sure that you're taking care of you, understanding what you need, and taking the steps, which may, like I said, include a mental health professional. It may include the support of someone else around you, friend, family member, coworker, whomever, right? Who the person who is most inspiring, uplifting, and supporting you. those individuals, right? It's really important. I was just on another live for those of you who joined with Dr. King, gosh, like what, about an hour and a half ago or so. We were just on another live talking just about that, how important it is to be supportive of one another, especially in our communities. So make sure that you're putting those things into place. But I say it depends only because there's such a weird, I mean, when we say hurt someone, there's such a, that's such a broad area, right? Sometimes we do have to set certain boundaries that are going to hurt someone else, but there's levels of hurt, right? If someone's like, "Oh, I can't believe that, you're not taking calls after 8 p.m. I'm so upset with you," which people do that sometimes. I mean, yeah, their feelings might be hurt, but you're not drastically traumatizing them, right? For the rest of their lives to say, "Hey, my boundary is after, set amount of time, my phone's off, I'm not talking to anyone." Right? So there's different levels of hurt versus like really physically or deeply emotionally, hurting someone. Like that's a different different level of hurt that hopefully we're not intentionally trying to do that with others. So I want to wrap up this mental health moment and again, remind you all that in this process, especially again, we're at the beginning of the year here, but in this process of obtaining whatever it is that you are working on, achieving your goals, whatever that may look like. Some of your goals are going to take, a week, a month, a year, 5 years. Like there's, right? We have all different types of goals, but the most important thing to recognize during that process is that it's really, really important that you continually work on you growing as a person so that when said goal is achieved, uh, you can be able to handle that and all that comes with it, right? You can be able to handle that particular weight loss. You can be able to handle that new relationship. You can be able to handle that new job. You can be able to handle whatever it is that you are seeking, right? And be the best version of you in those situations, right? And not break down because you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is really hard. Like it's different. It's different when you lose a lot of weight. It's different when you get a promotion. It's different when you get into a new relationship, making more money. Like all those things. Like there's massive changes that happen sometimes, and you have to be prepared for those things to happen for you, right? So which means you have to be in a constant state of how can I grow as a person and in a personal development frame of mind, right? So if you all need me, you can always reach out on drnekeshiahammond.com. Or you can connect with me I'm most often on Instagram, Dr.Hammond, or LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn, Dr. Nekeshia Hammond, or Facebook, or Twitter, or not Twitter. I keep saying Twitter. It's X now. Sorry. The other platform formerly known as Twitter. I need to, get with the times here. But nonetheless, you can connect with me on social, or reach out on my website if you have any needs. I hope that you have an amazing week, you all. Be blessed. Continue again to make the commitment to yourself. Make yourself your number one priority. Make sure that you're taking care of you so you can show up as the best version of yourself and for those around you. So until next week, be blessed, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great week, you all.